The challenge for Muslims, of course, is to implement that model. I don't see it as being a balance between freedom versus poverty, because we have a lot of poverty in the so-called free world. I don't think it's an Islamic matter which we have cornered the market on it. It's very much a challenge for everyone, and we're just putting forward these Islamic ideas as alternatives to the existing order.
Does Islam preclude capitalism in the sense of private ownership of the means of production, distribution, and exchange?
Not at all. As I touched upon earlier, obviously there wasn't much time, but there is a clear delineation between public, private, and state ownership. Private ownership includes definitely the means of production. It is only the public ownership which is more restrictive in terms of the natural resources, the open spaces, the public places, and so on and so forth. And state property is very much around certain state assets and buildings and so on. So it is very liberal, if I could use that term, in terms of the ownership rules. But the point is that Islam puts a very clear framework in terms of how one trades, how one undertakes business, the do's and the don'ts, and so on, which includes non-interest-based economy.
I have seen and debated with many environmentalists who talk about our BRICS research but have never actually read it. And that is actually a pretty critical part of many people that opine about it in a negative sense. There is no shortage of energy or other basic resources. There will be a dilemma over the next decade or 15 years as China gets to a certain GDP per capita. But once we go beyond that period, it is highly likely that the challenge facing the commodity industry will be the ones that they faced the past 20 years, which is exactly why a large number of energy companies don't want to invest significantly right now, because many of them have been through it before. But this Malthusian idea that we're suddenly going to run out of resources because of BRICS is not based on any serious research whatsoever. It's a typical fear that comes up every 100 years or something.
So you don't credit peak oil? Peak oil? You don't believe in that?
No. There is infinite amount of oil in the ground. It's a matter of trying to incentivize those that take risks to get it out of the ground.
Gentleman there.
Yes. Can I perhaps
Carrying on the way without being sensationalist about it, I mean, all the evidence simply shows that carrying on the way we are, that climate change will destroy the planet. I mean, it's simple as that. I mean, you can't. That is the evidence, and it's denied by various business lobby groups and so on, but that's the independent academic evidence. I mean, one example of what you're, I think, suggesting, that you don't always need growth in order to eradicate poverty or to provide good social services, is a very interesting example of Kerala State in India, which is actually one of the examples that the report that I was citing before about a high achieving country, although this is a state. Just very, very quickly, per capita incomes in Kerala are negligible. I mean, about $350 a year, I think. And yet the access to healthcare and education services is almost 100%. And actually it's a lot better than in many American or British cities. And Kerala is a very good example of how, through popular participation and through ordinary people's involvement in providing, controlling and managing services, huge benefits can actually be delivered to people without massive growth. Now, whether that model can be replicated elsewhere and the degree to which is the subject of quite a lot of academic analysis, and there's a big debate about that. But nevertheless, it's an interesting, very interesting example. I would just add, I mean, one of the big things for me around this whole energy issue is the massive new global great game that is now taking place in the Middle East, in Central Asia, in West Africa and in South America, between the world's great powers. Look at China and Africa, America signing deals with all these new countries in West Africa. Many people explain the war in Afghanistan partly as a way of getting access to the Caspian oil, Caspian Sea region and so on. Development rather than.
Look at Britain, that's announced 6 weeks before the invasion of Iraq, the British government produced a report saying that by 2015 Britain would be a net oil and gas importer. Which of course had nothing to do with the invasion of Iraq, but nevertheless, that was produced before. And it's completely missed by the mainstream media. And what's going on? And again, I mean, just do a Google search on new competition for global.